Before we get onto the video, do me a favor and hit the like button, it greatly helps out the channel. Also, while you're down there, subscribe for more. Now back to the video. Outside the Black Veil, we see that the MT was quick to arrive, and shortly after arriving, the team leaders of the 1st and 3rd Battalion quickly assembled their team into groups. The Blue Flower Guild had also arrived, and they looked onwards as the members of the MT assembled. One of the Blue Flower Guild members, a knight, recalled his military days as he observed the MT. A mage approached the knight, questioning why they couldn't just gather all the mage players and use battering magic to smash the Black Veil around Seoul Station. The knight expressed in a serious tone that they couldn't. He explained to the mage that the Black Veil is not magic. It's a rule created by the system, and there's no way to bypass it unless you override the system. So for now, all they could do is wait for the time to pass. Sometime later, 2 helicopters could be seen flying over the Black Veil. Out in front was a military helicopter, and closely behind it was a Blue Flower Guild's helicopter. The helicopters landed a distance away, and out of them came Kangseok and Catherine. As the two approached their members, Kangseok asked Catherine if the Blue Flower Guild had any hunters below level 15. Catherine turned her attention to Kangseok, and in a shocked tone she asked Kangseok if he thinks the number 1 guild would have hunters like that, and she questioned if Kangseok is really planning on sending a rescue team inside. She asked if those hunters wouldn't be walking into their death. Kangseok continued walking with a stoic look about him. He took off his glasses, and he expressed to Catherine that there are over 800 people inside Seoul Station. And he questioned how Catherine is able to think about prioritizing the hunters' lives in this situation. Suddenly his tone shifted, he turned his gaze forward, and he told Catherine that the military has a trump card inside the Black Veil. Inside the Black Veil, Lee had focused his attention on one of the monsters. He activated the Metal Smash skill, crushing the armor on the abdomen on the monster. While he was distracted, the other monster tried a sneak attack on him, however Lee quickly noticed. He activated the body strengthening skill, and he used metal control to move himself away. However, this monster was relentless, so while moving away from it using the chain skill, he turned to the guards and he asked them to freeze the monster like before. Manhwa quickly got on it, and he ordered the other guards to use the frost rune. The guards blasted the monster with frost attacks, freezing its legs and rendering it immobile. However, the other monster crawled on the wall, and it quickly made its way to an unsuspecting guard. It lunged at the guard, preparing to bite her head off. Lee noticed. He activated metal control, while expressing to the monster that it shouldn't get distracted. He shot the metal spheres into the cracks in the monster's armor, and he explained that he was their opponent. The monster fell to the ground, and the guard was able to get away safely. Afterwards, Lee used metal spin, grinding into the monster like the first one. The monster screamed out in pain, and shortly after it died. Seeing this enraged the other monster, and it started breaking through the ice that had formed on its body. Lee, with his signature grin, asked the monster if it was finally awake. He told it to calm down, since he would be sending it to the same place as its friend. To flex, Lee used the skill Metal Smash to kill the monster in one hit. However, his mana dropped from 63% to 39%. The villain, who was still hidden, observed in disbelief. In his head, there's no way a player of this caliber would use a subway or train, so he questioned why a guy like this is in Seoul Station of all places. As he thought more about it, he got furious, as he didn't expect he would end up failing his first mission like this. The villain then received a message from the system, informing him that he has failed to achieve the following goal for his main quest. The villain couldn't bide his time, so the venomous ironclad spiders at Gate 1 could nest inside Seoul Station. As the villain is currently only a villain candidate, his reward for completing this quest would be a promotion to official villain. He is then warned that once he has accepted the quest, it will be game over if he doesn't complete it properly. The villain started to panic as he was running out of time. He shifted his gaze towards the civilians that were in hiding. Manhwa called out to the other guards, and since it looked like the first wave of the gate was over, he ordered them to gather around. Afterwards, he thanked Lee, expressing that they wouldn't have been able to stop the first wave on their own. Lee seemed like a high-level ranked hunter, so he asked Lee if he could tell them his name. Lee remained silent. He just glared at the guards that had gathered in front of him, almost like he was looking for something. This really confused the guards, and they stared at each other with a puzzled look on their faces, questioning if they did something wrong. The female guard that Lee saved earlier held her cheek, and she started to blush as Lee's gaze shifted onto her for a moment. Manhwa, who was concerned, approached Lee questioning if something was wrong. After getting a good look at all the guards' faces, Lee's expression shifted. The villain wasn't here trying to blend in with the guards. This disappointed him as he heard the villain was a guard in his previous life. Suddenly, Sienna came running while calling out to Lee. Lee turned his attention to her with a shocked expression, as he had completely forgotten about Sienna. Sienna spoke to Lee, referring to him as vice platoon leader, and she asked him if all the civilians had been evacuated. Hearing Siana refer to Lee as vice platoon leader really shocked Manhwa, as S-rank players are supposed to be exempt from military service. This is because the country can't control them. Siana told Lee that because the spiders were so huge, she divided the civilians into small groups and evacuated them by putting each into a room with a narrow passageway. And luckily there were no serious injuries. After this, she asked Lee if it was really true that he stopped the first wave. She then demanded that he report every detail of what happened. This left Lee with a distraught expression on his face, and before he could get a word out, Manhwa suddenly asked him for his rank. Lee's expression changed again. This time he looked annoyed. He knew that he didn't have enough time to answer all of their questions, so in a serious tone he told them that their questions aren't important right now, because he believed this might be a double gate. This concerned Siana and Manhwa, and as they racked their brains for what to do next, Lee looked around with an irritable look on his face. If they were to start searching through the 800 civilians here, it's highly likely that the villain would be able to hide himself. If things were to go wrong, and the second wave begins, the villain would get a second chance, and since this was the case, it's a must that he stays 4 steps ahead of him. Outside the Black Veil, Kang Seok spoke to Minhee, expressing that he was appointed as the field commanding officer of the Seoul Station rescue operation. Minhee understood his assignment, and he pledged to complete his mission. The members of the rescue team started talking amongst themselves, questioning if Minhee wasn't a C-rank hunter, and if he was, they wondered why he was below level 15. This really ticked Minhee off. He turned his head to his team members and he glared at them with a death stare. Kang Seok intervened, expressing that everyone should be focused in moments like this. In a small speech, Kang Seok told the soldiers that it's with a heavy heart that he is sending his low-level troops into what would most likely be their deaths. However, the lives of the civilians depend on the rescue team. So as soldiers they must protect the civilians. He questioned if the soldiers understood this, and Minhee and the other soldiers shouted that they did. And as the rescue team was departing, Kang Seok told Minhee that he should actively incorporate Lee's input into the operation once they had made contact with him. This shocked Minhee, and he questioned why he would have to incorporate Lee's inputs when he was in charge of the rescue team. Inside the Black Veil, Lee left the group to look for the double gate. He found it underneath some stairs. Inside the double gate, the villain who was trying to use the double gate to further his mission was faced with a skeleton monster. He received a message from the system informing him that he wouldn't be attacked by monsters in this area. However, as he stared at the skeleton bones in front of him, he questioned why all the skeleton monsters weren't moving. He questioned if this is what the system means by will not attack. He then pulled up his quest information. His first quest was to bide his time until the venomous ironclad spider at Gate 1 could nest, but he failed in doing so. His second quest is to kill 500 civilians by any means necessary. This quest is still ongoing. The villain's third and final quest is to deliver the item received from the elite monster, Evil Seeker, to the villain alliance. This quest too was still ongoing. The villain stared at his quest list, and he calmed himself. He repeated to himself that he should just bear with it, because if he is able to complete this quest he will be promoted to a regular villain. This was a life-changing quest that other players will never get, so he reminded himself that he should stay calm. As he was racking his brain to think of what to do next, he noticed that metal spheres were heading in his direction. He took out an item, and tree roots quickly appeared from the ground and shielded him from the metal spheres. Afterwards, he questioned what this person that attacked him was doing here, and he explained that he was a railway guard. This person, Lee, who had more metal spheres suspended in the air using metal control, stood at the entrance of the cave. He exposed the villain's plan, expressing that he must have been planning to hide among the citizens, while waiting for the guards to get massacred during the first wave. And in case there were more players among the citizens, the villain would use his guard uniform to avoid suspicion, and then slaughter them. He questioned how hard the villain had to rack his brain to come up with this plan. Lee then called the villain, Young Jusiep, by his name, and he expressed that it's been a while since they last met. This left Jusiep in a daze. He lowered the roots that had protected him slightly, and he peeked through the small opening that was created, and he stared at Lee with a shocked expression. He lowered his guard further, and he asked how Lee knew of him. Jusiep is a B-rank villain candidate with the Cannibal Tree ability, and Lee knows that he is a future rank hunter that climbed to the top. Jusiep's nickname in the future is Black Tentacle. Lee smiled, and he expressed in an irritable tone that he knows Jusiep quite well, and he called him a fucking villain. This got Jusiep to lift his guard. He expressed that he doesn't know who Lee is, but he shouldn't be using the word villain out loud. Jusiep guessed that Lee was a rank hunter, and since he saw Lee's ability to manipulate metal, he used the roots to attack Lee. And as the roots headed towards Lee, Jusiep reminded Lee that no matter his rank there is something called compatibility. He expressed that Lee's metal spheres wouldn't be able to do anything to him. In a glimpse of the future, we see Jusiep, who had spread his roots throughout the city. Using the roots, he drained the life force of the citizens, and as he made his way through the city, He called out to Lee, questioning if he was just going to continue to hide. He asked Lee if he was just going to stand by and watch as his cannibal tree ability slaughters and devours all of the citizens. In the future, Jusiep had risen to a rank and was now working under the name Black Tentacle, and because of his cannibal tree ability he quickly rose the ranks and became number 1. Lee, who was hiding because he had been injured, listened with an angry expression on his face as Jusiep went around asking if he was all talk. In the present, Lee smiled, and he told Jusiep that he is well aware that his metal abilities wouldn't be able to do much against him. He activated body strengthening on his feet, and he used metal control to move himself out of the way of Jusiep's attack. Lee's odd movements surprised Jusiep, and he questioned how Lee was suddenly able to move like that. Using the skill chain, Lee suddenly rushed at Jusiep. This made Jusiep question if Lee wasn't a ranged type hunter like him. While he ran at Jusiep, Lee used his metal control ability to shoot some of the metal spheres at Jusiep. Jusiep quickly blocked the attack, and he shot multiple roots at Lee, and Lee used a skill chain to move himself over the roots. Jusiep couldn't understand why Lee was running at him. He thought that there was no way Lee's metal sphere attacks would work on him, so he questioned why Lee was recklessly running towards him. He thought maybe Lee had gone mad. While he was distracted, Lee fired more metal spheres at Jusiep's blind spot. Jusiep noticed in time and he blocked the attack. In the safety of his protective barrier made of roots, he called Lee a moron, and he expressed that Lee could attack him all he wants since none of his attacks would work. Lee finally landed on the protective wall of roots, and with a menacing grin, he expressed that Jusiep's wall should be enough firewood. Jusiep started laughing. He asked Lee if he thought he could do something when he got close enough, and he expressed that Lee has no idea about his power. He told Lee that his ability is the cannibal tree, and it will chew off Lee's arms and digest them before Lee can do anything about it. The tree barrier protecting Jusiep extended branches that quickly wrapped around Lee's hands like a snake. Lee grinned harder, and fumes started emitting from his mouth. He activated body strengthening on his hand, stopping the cannibal tree from devouring his hands. Jusiep, who was clueless, had a confused look on his face, and he wondered why the tree wasn't digesting Lee's arms already. Lee opened his mouth, and flames started gathering in his mouth. Jusiep quickly took notice of the flames, and he questioned why flames were appearing in Lee's mouth out of the blue. As the flames collected and Lee's mouth grew larger, Jusiep told Lee that he was in the middle of a quest, and if Lee spared his life, then he would give Lee all the reward items for the unlucky event. Jusiep smiled. He thought this was great thinking on his part, and he thought Lee wouldn't refuse his offer since he was offering to give him all of the rewards. Jusiep continued on saying that he was on a quest buff, so he was certain that he could clear the gate with no effort. In fact, he made a promise that he could. Lee called bullshit, and as the flames spewed from his mouth he told Jusiep that he used the same trick in his previous life when they faced off too. This left Jusiep puzzled as he tried to wrap his mind around what Lee meant by previous life. Lee told Jusiep that he should just die, and he released the flames he collected in his mouth like a flamethrower skill. The flames quickly burnt through the wood from Jusiep's cannibal ability, engulfing in flames. Outside the Black Veil, Minhee and the rescue team approached the Black Veil preparing to enter. Before they did, Minhee told the rescue team that they should get their act together since they wouldn't know what kind of gate opened inside Seoul Station. Minhee took a deep breath in, and he entered the Black Veil, and as the other soldiers entered after him, they were warned by the system that they were entering a dangerous zone, and once they entered they wouldn't be able to leave unless certain conditions were met. Being the first one to enter, Minhee took shelter behind the pillars and he directed the soldiers to take shelter and hold their positions. Jumu quickly rushed in, and after seeing the situation he gasped. He shouted that there was a huge spider. Minhee whispered to him, telling him to shut up, and Junmo quickly covered his mouth. Suddenly someone called out questioning what that was just now. This shocked Minhee. He spoke saying they were the MT's rescue team. Manhwa emerged from one of the pillars holding up the structure of Seoul Station with a shocked expression. Minhee ordered the soldiers to set up a perimeter and he started questioning Manhwa. The first question Minhee asked was why there were no civilians around, and he asked Manhwa to explain the situation. Manhwa explained that thanks to an MT member they were able to evacuate the civilians to a safe area, and he expressed that even now they are following the orders of that MT member. Minhee then overwhelmed Manhwa with questions. He asked if that member was a woman, and if so he questioned where she was and if she was hurt. Manhwa was confused. He explained to Minhee that the female soldier is safe, and she is the one controlling matters at the temporary shelter right now. Manhwa explained that the one he was talking about was someone named Lee, and right now they were following his orders. Hearing this made Minhee grit his teeth in anger. Junmo cut in, and he asked Manhwa if the soldier he was talking about had spiked hair, and if could sometimes be seen with a sinister smile on his face. Manhwa replied that Junmo is correct. and Junmo in an excited tone told Minhee that it must be Corporal Lee. Minhee interrupted. In a tone of anger he told Junmo to stay still, and he asked him if he didn't know his place. The way Minhee was speaking to Junmo shocked Manhwa. Junmo pouted, and he apologized even though he didn't want to. Minhee then turned to Manhwa, and he told him that Lee was an F-rank hunter, and since he was a C-rank hunter, he would be in command now. Manhwa lowered his head, and he questioned how Minhee was able to enter this place. He reminded Minhee that there was a level restriction of 15, meaning Minhee was below level 15 like them, so he shouldn't be speaking like someone who is vastly stronger. After hearing this, Minhee was at a loss for words. Manhwa lifted his head, and as he glared at Minhee, he expressed that he was already aware of Lee's rank, but he is willing to comply with his orders because he witnessed firsthand that Lee is completely worthy of being in command. He told Minhee that he was a C-rank hunter as well, and using his logic he questioned why he had to follow his orders when they are the same rank. And since Minhee called himself the captain of the rescue team, he questioned how Minhee plans of rescuing them and the other civilians. Minhee started to explain hesitantly that he and his team will build a barricade at the entrance with a narrow passageway. There they would bide their time for as long as possible. Then he was interrupted by Siana, who came running to inform Manhwa that they were in big trouble. Minhee quickly approached her. He grabbed her by the shoulders asking if she was hurt anywhere. Siana was shocked to see Minhee, and she questioned why he was here. Minhee tried to explain that he was here to rescue her, however Siana quickly moved past him. She expressed that his explanation wasn't important, and he told Manhwa that the civilians have realized that this is a double gate. This took Manhwa by surprise, and at the temporary shelter, the civilians approached the guards, questioning why they would hide the fact that this was a double gate from them. The female guard that Lee saved earlier explained that they did this to avoid causing chaos. However, the civilians questioned why they should trust the guards. They remarked that that guard was right, and they questioned if the guards were just using the civilians as human shields to buy time. The female guard was confused, and she asked the civilians where they got that idea from, and one of the civilians explained that the guard with the scar on his nose told them the truth. Inside the other gate, Jusip, who had half his body burnt and was barely alive, remarked that he made full preparations for this quest. He didn't think it was fair because this opportunity was so hard for him to get. Lee questioned why Jusip was grumbling. He expressed that he was busy so Jusip should hurry up and die. And to aid Jusip, he attacked him with the metal spheres, killing him. Lee was tired of this shit, and he questioned why all these damn villains have the same damn repertoire. Suddenly bright light filled the cave, and a strong gust of wind started to blow. Lee quickly covered his face, and he stared in the direction of the source of the wind. He noticed that a gate was opening, and after the gate fully opened, two female angels flew down, one with red hair and another with blonde hair. And as the angels flew around him, Lee received messages from the system informing him that he is rapidly recovering his health and mana. And shortly after, he received another message that informed him that a quest had arrived for him. This message made Lee grin. A system window appeared in front of Lee. The window contained all of the information for the hidden quest Light Bearer. Lee stopped the conspiracy of the betrayer of mankind, a villain, and because of this he gained the chance to become the protector of humanity, a person called the Guardian. Lee stared at the window without saying a word. Another message with a question that asked Lee if he is willing to accept this quest appeared. It prompted Lee to choose yes or no. At this point, the angels had their hands all over Lee to coax him into accepting. With a determined look on his face, Lee chose not to accept the quest. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.